Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call to order the October 8th, 2019 meeting of the Carolina Board of Supervisors to order. Unfortunately, the chair and vice chair are not able to attend tonight, so our first order of business will be to accept nominations for chair for tonight's meeting. So with that,
I'd like to nominate Mr. Underwood as the chair and Mrs. Long as the vice chair for the evening.
Second.
we have a motion and second. Any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it.
Chair for the day.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We'll start off the meeting by, should do roll call, by the invocation by Supervisor Long, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Can we all stand, please?
Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we give thanks for the beauty of this world. We give thanks for bringing us here together. We give thanks for your guidance, and we ask for your wisdom tonight as we make decisions to affect the county and the citizens. We ask, dear Heavenly Father, that the spirit of community will always be guided by your light as we enter another day in your service. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Thomas, opening board comments.
Give me a second, Mr. Chairman, if you would, please. Yes, sir. I have a couple, and I can probably just remember those. We have. Oh, I'll do that. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a couple. One is I'm glad to see our representatives from VDOT is here. We were looking forward to having Lynn here for quite some time. I also want to let Lynn know that I'm deeply appreciative of her service here and congratulate her on her almost 1-year anniversary of being at the county, and to remind her that I am the biggest fan and supporter of VDOT when they do things right, and I am also the biggest you-know-what when things don't go right. So we're going to talk about the 207 speed limit, and I do appreciate that and all the other things we have. I do have one thing. I was at a program in another county over the weekend, and they had a program that I thought we should have had here and we actually missed, and I wanted to just bring it up and hopefully we could commemorate this. In 1969, for those of us who are that old to know, Caroline schools were actually integrated. And this is the actual school that was integrated. We had a recognition of the Bowling Green Senior High, and we placed right outside, which was the actual class that did that. So I was hoping, Mr. Culley, if you could have staff just have a couple of representatives from Bowling Green Senior High, and I've got a couple of names I can give you. If we could just have them come in December, just to recognize them. It wasn't an easy time, and I know when we talk about the times now, 1969 was a lot harder, or maybe I was a lot younger, but it's something that we should at least commemorate the 50th anniversary of integration in the Caroline Public Schools. So I'd like us to do that. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a few. Although I was not able to attend, all reports I got that the State Fair had a banner year, so I would like to congratulate them on their success. We do have the Harvest Festival coming up in 2 weeks, so I'll be out there with my Ruritan Club, but I'm just trying to get people. That's always a great event. Speaking of the Ruritan Club that I'm a part of, we do have, obviously, again, the Polar Bear Plunge coming up in February. We've actually already started planning for that. So if anyone knows a 501c3 church organization that would like to be part of it, Mr. Schiebel, I think you had mentioned, we had talked about maybe the Masons being part of that. So we're always looking for new organizations, and I actually think we've actually going to add a couple already this year. Finally, over the weekend on Sunday, I got an opportunity to play in a softball tournament, benefit softball tournament for the Caroline softball team. It was really, really fun to be part of. Mr. Wick was on my team, Dr. Monroe. We didn't end up being that great, but we had a blast. We had a blast doing it. So, and it's nice to see that people in the community bringing people together. I mean, that's what it's all about, not tearing down, bringing it together. So, I do appreciate that. And I also, kind of embarrassed to say, but I do want to thank your trainer. I took a ground ball off the face, and so she had to work on me, and she did a really good job. So I do thank her for that. So I will be sending her a thank you note.
Thank you, Mr. Black.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Well, I did get to spend several park days at the State Fair, and overall the weather was good. Had a couple of days that were really hot, but other than that, it was perfect. Most importantly, we didn't have any heavy rains, so I hope they did have a great year. Most people looked happy, and much thanks to all the different law enforcement groups and to VDOT for all the signage to keep people safe on the road out there. It's a little tricky with all the people crossing and turning and moving out, so much appreciated there. I was also delighted to read that the Commissioner of Revenue's Association at their 100th annual convention stated that our county's Commissioner of Revenue's office was one of the first localities in the Commonwealth to be recognized and to achieve office of accreditation. And I'd like to request that the staff and the Commissioner be recognized at a future meeting for their extra study and dedication to achieve that for us. I think that's a nice light on the county. Calendar-wise, I do plan to be tomorrow morning at the AP Hill Steering Committee. We meet twice a year with AP Hill, Caroline, Spotsylvania, King George, and the towns. So if anybody has any particular questions, catch me on the break so that I can take that to them tomorrow. On October the 14th, I'd like to invite the public back here at Mr. Schiebel, 7 p.m. Do I have the time correct for our water permit? At 7 p.m., we're going to have a presentation by the consultants that the county has hired for our Rappahannock water intake permit here to explain the procedure and the plans for the future. It'll be a good chance for citizens to get insight on that and to ask any questions, because after the presentation, there'll be a board with maps and designs set up for you to see. So spread the word on that.
7:30.
7:30? 7:30, Joey, or 7?
7.
7, here in this room. And of course, fall is here, as Mr. Black referred to. Harvest Day is on the 19th. Sparta Day is the 12th. Frog level is the 26th. Mr. Wood, do you know the hours for the frog level? Okay. I have to work some of those Saturdays, but hopefully I'll see some of you on those when that I can make. But we hope you all have a great yeah, it is the 50th anniversary for the frog level event, so try to make an effort to be there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Supervisor Long. I just have a couple of opening board comments. Went over to the fair, I believe last Thursday or Friday, met with the governor, with Mr. Wilson and Mr. Culley. Also had a chance to spend about 7 hours riding through the fair to see what it really takes to put the fair on. And it is really amazing, all of the pieces that have to come together to put the fair into play. But it's just really amazing. I just really had no idea. I mean, you look at the vendors and the rides, but then you go over on the other side and onto the livestock where they're shaving the sheep and they're grooming them, and just really amazing the work that they do, so it was a great opportunity. Also had a constituent. Oh, yeah. Also with us on Thursday was Dr. Calvary from the school superintendent. So thank you, Dr. Calvary, for coming over. I had a constituent meeting last week, and there were a couple issues that seemed to come up again and again. One is the internet. People are really, really concerned that we haven't want us to a harder push to try to get internet. And we talked about Atlantic and the things we're trying to do, but that's one of the major concerns and a major theme that continually is brought up at each meeting. The second one, of course, is always infrastructure. How can we get water and sewer down? And we have the sewer plant there, but how can we extend that to more people in the Reedy Church district? And that's all my comments for today. Amendments to the agenda.
Mr. Chair, we would like to remove closed meeting from the agenda.
Any other amendments to the agenda? Hearing none, can I get a motion to amendments?
So moved.
Has been properly moved and second that we remove the closed meeting from the agenda. Okay. Yes, sir. Now we move to the presentations and reports section of the agenda. First, we'll have a recognition of the Department of Fire and Rescue for their successful earning of the U.S. Department of Health, Department of Homeland Security, SCBA grant. Mr. Chief Loftus.
You guys can come on up. Just very quickly, as we spoke at the last board meeting, we used a team approach this time for the grant. This is our fourth year applying for this grant for the purpose of replacing our air packs. I went back in my notes, and we had met exactly 1 month prior to the deadline. And this year, instead of assigning it to one person to finish and complete and submit, we all sat down and divided up the areas. Chief Garnett did all of the narratives. Ms. Casey Treon did all of the air pack research as far as what packs we needed, how many, where they were, and some of the department demographic data. And Captain Ed Bonham did a lot of the research on the improvements that have been made, therefore giving data to Chief Garnett to write in the narrative why we needed those packs, why our packs were deficient. And the rest fell to me to compile and finally submit for that. So this is the team that completed it. So,
Chief Loftus, can you mention the amount of the grant? And
sure. We originally applied for $1.3 million. We were granted just over $900,000 for that purpose. So.
Thank you.
All right. Okay.
Again, thank you, Chief Loftus, and all of the people who participated in the grant. Next, we have the presentation of the Walk for Cancer Awareness and General Health. Sylvia Montgomery. Good evening.
Good evening. And first of all, I want to thank you all for allowing us time on your agenda this evening. So again, my name is Sylvia Montgomery, and I am a member of Mount Onai Baptist Church in the Rita District. And is it possible that we could have the presentation up? Okay, thank you. Can I? Okay, thank you. Thank you. So, members of my church, the Relay for Life of Caroline County, it's something that we have been participating in since 2013. And so each year, we just take a look at things we could do in our community as far as Breast Cancer Awareness Month and cancer. We have a lot of cancer survivors in our congregation, as well as some loved ones that we've lost, as I'm sure most of us in this room do. So 2 years ago, the Relay for Life was no longer here in the county. We actually had to start going out to the Richmond area, about 30 miles out, to join the Greater Richmond team. And to my knowledge, we have one team from Caroline County who has been participating in that since we've been going to the Greater Richmond area. As you know, the Relay for Life has been an event where the whole county could just participate. We'd be there to support one another, to comfort one another, to love on one another, to remember those we've lost, and to recognize and celebrate our survivors. And as far as I know, I believe the event here in Caroline County, when it initially got started, actually started off at the high school, at the track, and it was an overnight event. And then after a while, it turned into a day event. But no matter how long the event was, it was always a fun-filled event and an opportunity for the community to come together and to rally around one another. So what we, the women of Mount Onai Baptist Church, are proposing is that we have another opportunity to come together as a county by having a Promise to Walk campaign. And the Promise to Walk campaign is actually a health and wellness campaign. In addition to being a great motivator for losing weight, walking has also been known to reduce the risk of cancer in so many patients. So with this Campaign to Walk event, we're proposing a 4-week campaign over a period of 1 month. And with this campaign, of course, those who are participating would make a donation or register. The proceeds would go to the American Cancer Society. We're proposing that people would have this opportunity to increase their walk activity, increase their step intake by about 500 steps a day each week. And so that's a tracking thing. So we would have to track that, the progress of everyone who participates. The recommendation is that, people take 10,000 steps a day. So we're asking people to just start wherever you are. If you're at 3,000 steps a day, then the goal is to increase it by 500 or as many steps as possible per day. So again, it's about health and wellness, an opportunity to get that health and wellness back in track for us. In addition, we're also asking people to use this as an opportunity to advocate and to help bring awareness for the preventative care that's needed and the early detection that's needed to possibly prevent cancer or to at least treat it early, using community engagement as an opportunity to do that. We're asking groups, civic organizations, and churches to even have their own mini walk campaigns and programs as well over this 4-week period. And then to culminate all of this is a recognition and celebration event for everyone to come together who was a part of it and to recognize certain individuals for their successes, to honor our cancer survivors, and to remember our loved ones, just as we did when we had the Relay for Life event. With this opportunity, again, we are proposing that this is a county-wide event, and in order for that to happen, we really want to get as many agencies or groups within the county involved in it as possible. We already have someone from the American Cancer Society who is willing to work with us on this. I've talked to the YMCA, and they are very supportive of this event. Also, I understand that we now have a Caroline Woodland walking trail, and there's an opportunity for us to suggest to the civic organizations or churches to use that as an opportunity to have some of their mini walk programs. Also, I've talked with Caroline Promise, and they seemed willing to be a part of this as well. We're also hoping to have support from Parks and Rec, the Caroline Libraries, the Health Department, CVS, and anyone else within the county who is willing to be a part of this. So the intent is for this to be a county-wide engagement. So we're hoping that we will have the opportunity to do that. And I was told to keep it short, so I'm keeping it short. But we welcome any questions that you may have for us. I have there my name and contact information, as well as the additional women at the Mount Honor Baptist Church who will be working on this with me.
Thank you, Ms. Montgomery. Is there a specific role that you are asking the Board of Supervisors to play in this event?
So we're hoping that with the board's support, that there are other organizations within the county as well that would also be supportive. I know when I talked to Parks and Rec, they felt like they needed to get approval from someone other than themselves, as well as the county library. So just having that support from the board, I think, would give others what they need in order to be able to move forward with the planning with us.
Mr. Chairman, I spoke to Ms. Montgomery. She had this idea a few months ago, and I said maybe you should come to the board to get support for the board for the county. You weren't asking for any funding from the county. You were asking for maybe use of the walking trail. Maybe we could work with the Sheriff's Department to make sure it was safe to walk. And, you know, we could add things on the county park. Safe to walk late at night, maybe. So there are things the county can do at no cost. Put it on our website. You know, we can make the challenge here that I think a church in your district could do almost as well as one in my district, and things like that. So we really want to kind of support her, because it's a great idea. We're pulling back where the Cancer Society was in the county. You know, personally, I'm all for this idea. I told her that I myself was a cancer survivor, so I think it's good that we do that and bring as much notoriety and as much, you know, news to this particular fight. So the motion will be for the county to provide whatever support we can have through our website, through any advertisement, use of Parks and Rec, use of the county facilities as needed. Is that what you need?
Yes, thank you.
So there's been a motion by Mr. Thomas to support the Walk for Cancer Awareness.
Second.
Mr. Black.
I think we're all seconding.
Yeah.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Vote carries. Certainly, I think this is an activity that we'd love to participate in. So any ideas that you have, maybe you can speak with Mr. Thomas or either another board member about how we can make this a really county-wide event. But we support you 100%. And
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Thank
Next on the agenda is a presentation on the Caroline County Public Schools partnership with Caroline Habitat for Humanity, Dr. Calveric and Jason Tickle.
Oh, that's Mr. Black. Or was that Mr. White?
Good evening, members of the board. I'm Sarah Calveric, Superintendent of Caroline County Public Schools, and I do not stand alone this evening. I am amongst great company, and you will soon meet those who will share a tremendous opportunity that has presented itself not only for the Caroline community, but Caroline County Public School students. Everything that CCPS does prepares our students for a 3E pathway of enrollment, enlistment, or employment. We know that 5C competency and vocational skills are just as much a path to financial stability and security as anything else. It's in this spirit that we're excited to begin pursuing a new initiative that aims to provide upperclassmen at Caroline High School with early exposure to the industries of construction, marketing, and food service. This service learning partnership will be designed to provide the next generation a hands-on education in valuable technical skills while engaging them in the social aspect of building affordable housing and bettering their community one project at a time. I am pleased to invite our collaborative team of Jason Tickle, Mac Williams, Ashley Ward, and a number of CHS staff and students to the podium at this time.
Thank you all for your time. Most of you guys know Habitat for Humanity. I've been here many times and spoken to many of you one-on-one, but just a little refresher. We're a global nonprofit housing organization that is in all 50 states and 70 countries around the world. We have a vision where everyone has a decent place to live. We work towards that vision by building strength, stability, and self-reliance in partnership with families in need of decent and affordable housing. Habitat homeowners help build their own homes alongside volunteers and pay an affordable mortgage. Over 40 years, Habitat has built over 3 million homes across Caroline County. We want to continue that legacy by continuing to build here in Caroline County with families that make no more than 60% of area median income. Our program not only makes homeownership affordable, but a reality for many who didn't think that it could be possible. Our partnership with a family is to build an affordable home using the USDA 523 Mutual Self-Help Program. In combination, volunteers and families build their own homes and get an affordable home loan through the USDA 502 Direct Home Loan that has interest rates as low as 1%. Families put in as much as 20 to 30 hours a week on their homes to make sure that they're affordable. They also complete an extensive VHDA homebuyer education course that makes them ready to become a responsible homeowner and a contributing member of the county by paying taxes and keeping their homes up. Currently, we are seeking applications for our next round of builds. As you guys know, we just broke ground on 5 homes in Milford the other week. We are looking for more families for this spring to build with. What's exciting about this is many people in the county, many first-year teachers will qualify for our program. So we've been going around and talking to many of the staff in the schools about this. But we are seeking applications now. So thank you for the time, and I'd like to turn it over to one of my partners here.
Good evening. The data is clear. Homeowners experience better quality of life, greater wealth, and overall improved well-being. Specifically, the average American renter's net wealth is $5,200, while a homeowner's is $195,400. Children whose parents own a home are 118% more likely to attend post-high school education. Children who are raised within a home display less behavior problems. Many faculty and staff members' salary and financial health make them eligible for the self-help housing grant. And finally, the school division's commitment to providing each student with experiential learning experiences has built a natural bridge between Habitat and CCPS. Our partnership with Habitat for Humanity reflects the school division's commitment to providing each student with opportunities to understand and demonstrate community engagement and civic responsibility. Through service learning, students participate in the local or wider community while trying to make the world a better place. The benefits of service learning are substantial. It opens eyes and minds to social justice and empathy, enriching learning by engaging students in meaningful service to their schools and communities, applying academic skills to solving real-world issues, linking established learning objectives with genuine needs, and providing career exploration opportunities. To breathe life into this service learning partnership, Caroline High School will partner with Habitat by working with 3 different departments to include our CTE Building Trades Department, Culinary Arts Department, and Fine Arts Department. You will see in the coming slides how each department will have an active role in using their skills and trades as they are involved in the process of building a house. So first to speak to you is Mr. Anthony Dowdy and Mr. Zach Mushney for Building Trades.
Good evening. I'm Zachary, and I'm a senior at Caroline High School. And over the past few years, I've had the privilege of working with Mr. Black and Mr. Roberts. Their program has given me some great opportunities. In Mr. Black's class, I go in and I learn how to design on the computer through CAD work, and I go into Mr. Roberts and actually build what I design on the computer. I create blueprints for the class to build as well, and when they're building their projects off of what I've designed, I get to go to the Innovation Center and work on laser cutting, resin work, and I'm also only student trusted with wood turning there as well. With these projects, I started on another project with the school, which was building a tiny house. Now, the tiny house, I've got to wire that, put up the walls, the roof, and then Mr. Williams brought us the plans for the Habitats for Humanities. We've now started prefabbing the walls, and we're going to get that process done, and I'm excited to go on a larger scale of what the tiny house is and actually put up walls to a real house in a real-world situation. This is going to be a great opportunity for me because it's something I plan to do for my entire life. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Anthony Dowdy, and I'm a senior at Caroline High School. I've been in Mr. Black's drafting and design programs for the past 4 years, and through his programs I've gained many opportunities, one being the Hanover Regional Governor School, where I learned many leadership skills and had a great time there. I've also been a part of TSA for the past 2 years, and in that program I've learned many speaking skills and more leadership skills. All of these have also helped me with the Habitat for Humanities project that I'm currently working on. Me and another student by the name of Aiden Harrison are building a 3D model of the home that's being built. We're doing things like creating a walkthrough, which is going to allow you to be able to kind of go on a tour through the whole house. And I'm very excited to see my work that's being on the computer brought to life in on-site constructions. Thank you.
The Fine Arts Department will be involved in several ways. Students will work to create a character which will represent the safety standards followed on an active work site. This involves completing character research as well as learning about figure drawing and character development. Students will also be working on creating a rendering of the home based on the plans provided. They will be incorporating guest speakers, research, and collaborative project solutions. I hear the students are very excited about their characters that they've created so far, various snails and bears that have hard hats and safety goggles exhibiting those safe work practices. So next up, Mr. Brandon Franzen will share about culinary arts.
Good evening, I am Brandon Franzen. I'm a culinary student, and chef teaches us and coaches us on the 6 traits of a professional chef, which is knowledge, skill, taste, judgment, dedication, and of course pride. We use each of these traits in everyday life, in the classroom, in the labs, and when catering events. He He also provides opportunities in our learning environment to engage in real-time, real-life, and hands-on experience that will prepare us for the competitive workforce. We operate the Caroline Catering Company, where we put our training to use. We use every aspect and process once the client selects the menu. We test and run the menu, prep it, cook it, serve it, transport it, and we also set it up and break it down at each event. We provide clients with high-quality experience while enhancing our work knowledge of the industry. It is extremely hard work, but Chef makes it fun, so not only am I learning valuable skills, I am also enjoying myself at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you, students. As you can tell, we're very excited to have Habitat as part of CCPS. So Mr. Jason Tickle and Mr. Mac Williams will describe what's next.
Good evening. I'm McWayne Williams. I'm the Director of Building Operations for Habitat. Many of you were at the grant signing when this all started. At that function, I had a privilege to meet Superintendent Dr. Kavaric. That's where, what you just heard the presentation, actually started forming the ideas. You just don't have a simple conversation with Dr. Kavaric. But many of you, again, were at the groundbreaking ceremony in Milford of the 5 new homes. So we've had the grant signing and we've had the groundbreaking. And so what's next? It's apparent that I was a builder here in Caroline County for over 40 years, designed and built homes. And in that conversation, many times came up about affordable homes. Affordable homes just can't happen. You just can't put the packages together to bring the cost down. So in order to get affordable homes, you have to have a community. Now, many of you that were at the groundbreaking ceremony recognize that at that event, we had the entire community there. We had federal level, state level, and local level government. Also, we had faith-based presence there, and we had the building people there supporting it. In order to do this affordable homes, these homes are for teachers and first responders and the people who serve us. In order to do that, it takes a community involvement. And that's what it was so demonstrated so well at the groundbreaking ceremony. I'm real pleased that in our partnership with the school, it allowed me to get into their trades room, their tech room, and talk to the teachers and some of the students. And the students that you met tonight is a fair representation of what's going on in our schools. You heard the young man said that he took the blueprints and they drew the blueprints and they're going to make a model. And so I've had a chance to review those blueprints. And I must say it was an improvement of the ones that I had given them that a professional had done. Every detail was clean and crisp. The only thing these young people lack is the on-hands experience. And so in order for Dr. Kavaric to get her dream to come true, to have our students employed, enlisted, or enrolled, they need hand-on experience. So we feel like this partnership is part of the community that's going to help build the community. You hear the excitement of the young men as they came to see they're part of something bigger in their lives to help the community. So it was through y'all's vision back somehow or another that you and Jason have decided to bring this grant to our county. This is what we're reaping from that. So what's next? This week, we'll finalize paperwork and the loans will go to closing. And then we'll be applying for our building permits the first of the week. And at that point, it will depend on when we get those building permits out is when we actually do the groundbreaking. So tonight I applaud you for the decision of help breaking bringing the grant to our community. I hope you see that we're trying to be good stewards with that grant. And I think everybody understands the value of what's happening here. And so I'm so excited to be back in my community and working in my community, and especially with the partnership that we have with Caroline High School. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Williams.
So just to close out, as you guys can see by the project timeline up there, it's a 2-year grant. We're working on our first 5 now. We'll start our second 5 in the spring, which we hope will be made up of primarily teachers and first responders. And then, of course, in June of 2021, we'll relaunch, Lord willing, second round of this grant. So thank you again for your time and your continued support.
Thank you, Mr. Tickle.
I do, and I applaud you. And it's so emotional for me because I was once 17 or 18, and my dream was to become an architect and build a better world. So I know what you guys are doing, and it's a great thing, and I really appreciate it. And you can build a better world. The other thing is there are other school officials that aren't being recognized by not standing up. So I see Mr. Black back there, and I think he should stand and be recognized, and there's a couple of others. So Dr. Calveric, if you want to.
Thank you. Absolutely. Thank you for recognizing those who have joined us in the audience. We have Mr. Black with our CAD and engineering program. We have Chef Jazz with our culinary program. We have our fearless leader, Mr. Just, our new principal of CHS. Am I overlooking anyone? Former student who is now successful in the industry. Please stand and be recognized.
I think that's great.
We also have a Habitat for Humanity board member, Stephanie. Please stand. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for all your good work.
Mr. Black, you have any comments?
Yeah, Dr. Calveric,
Dr. Calveric.
Dr. Calveric, I just want to say thank you. This kind of goes along with the MC Dean partnership. I think it's an addition to another thing that you guys can say that I'm not sure of any other school system that does this with Habitat. I don't know if this is a unique to Caroline or if there's another school system. So that's really, it really says a lot. So I mean, that's kind of what it's all about, because a lot of times now, I remember when I first started teaching, we were telling kids, 20 years ago, if you don't have a college degree, if you're not a bachelor, you don't have a bachelor's degree, you're going nowhere. And it's now with all the trades that are available and so forth, there's all kinds of different paths. So it's nice to see the school system saying, hey, look, it's not just a bachelor's degree that's out there. There's kids that can go into the trades, go into the military. So really do appreciate that, and I think this program would go a long way to helping the community. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Black.
Thank you, Mr. Black. Ms. Long, you have any comment?
Just thank you all for everything, and we're looking forward to continuing working together, and I think it's going to be great fun for everyone. Thank you.
Get your hard hat ready.
All right.
Dr. Calveric and Mr. Williams and Mr. Tickle, certainly we appreciate all you do, and we look forward to continue working with you and making this a success. Thank you.
Thank you.
So excited.
Our last presentation from this evening will be a Virginia Department of Transportation report by Ms. Lynn Keenan from the Fredericksburg Regency Administrator.
Good evening. All right, so in the interest of time, I have a presentation. I have a few good news stories to share with you before we dive in. I know the 207 speed study is going to be highly discussed, but just a few things to bring up before we get started. You all should have gotten a copy of the board report that I sent earlier. So just to hit on some of the high points. For you, Supervisor Underwood, we did a patch. I know that there had been an issue on Route 30 regarding there was a 4-inch dip at the end of the Route 30 bridge between the line of Hanover and Caroline County. So to bring that back up, we added a 100-foot patch to repair that. We tried to get that done as early as we could ahead of the state fair, so that was completed on September 10th of this year. Also, in addition with the state fair, VDOT worked closely with Virginia State Police and local police to make sure that we could drop that speed limit safely. So that was dropped to 35 miles per hour during the duration of the state fair. We also worked closely with Caroline County, and we thank you for providing speed trailers so that we could notify the public about that change in the speed limit during the 2 weeks of the fair. We had over 15 message boards and 20 members of the VDOT staff out there as well, assisting with traffic control, parking, and other signage requirements. Right now we have our Boomax crews out in Port Royal area to cut back some vegetation and daylight some of those signs. So you might be seeing them out on the roadways with some Boomaxes doing some vegetative work. There's been an invasive species in the area called the emerald ash borer. It's basically attacking the emerald ash, the ash trees in the area. We've had a significant issue up in the northern part of the residency, but we're seeing that bug start to come down further south. Our district roadside crews are working closely to identify trees that might be negatively impacted by this. Basically, the bug eats around the center of the trees become very brittle, and they basically snap in high wind situations. So we're trying to take care of those as early as possible. It's a statewide phenomenon. It's getting very regional in its nature. So we're looking at several millions of dollars across the Commonwealth to take care of this, but we're identifying trees where we can and trying to take those down as we move forward. Additionally, next spring we plan to use our plant growth retardant to try to curtail growth and reduce our mowing costs in the future. We applied it for the first time in this residency earlier this year. We think we applied it a little bit too late because of the heavy rains. It didn't do all that we had hoped, so we're applying that a little bit earlier in the coming years in the hopes that we can attack some of this grass and try to keep the growth down earlier in the year. So with that, if you will turn your attention to the screen. So we did some studying of the 60 mile per hour speed limit section on Route 207. An initial speed study was completed in September of 2018, found that the average speed was 60.1 miles per hour. And then again, after the speed limit had been increased, we studied that area again and found that the median speed was 60.4 miles per hour. We use what we call the 85th percentile to set speeds. Our goal is to capture what most drivers feel comfortable driving, and this shows that between last year, before the speed limit had been increased, to now, we're seeing a relatively similar pattern of speed. These were done by radar, so those studies were collected. They were collected on sunny days with no impacts to pavements, so those dry conditions. We also captured that data when there was free flow traffic, so if, for instance, the car in the front was blocking several lanes of traffic, we would let that clear until we had a fully free flow opportunity to address that. So in response to some board concerns about the speeds in that area, this was taken up through our chain of command. That was through Marcy Parker, who's the district engineer. It went up to the chief engineer, the commissioner of VDOT, as well as the Secretary of Transportation. So this has been reviewed at the highest levels within the department and then also above the department. So they reviewed the data that we had collected. They reviewed the crashes that have been occurring in the area both before and after. We pulled a 3-year sample to review on that. So the actions that we're proposing back, we've heard that the board is concerned about this, and so in response to that, we're proposing to extend the 55 mile per hour zone by 3,000 feet. That'll cover the intersection within Lady Smith Road, so that's 3,000 feet eastbound. We plan to install reduced speed ahead signs within the next 30 days to notify the public that that speed limit zone will be extending further. And then again, in 1 year, we'll come back and re-review all this data. We'll review any crashes that have occurred and then do another speed study by radar with free flow conditions at the same locations just to see if the traffic is doing the same thing that we're projecting that it's doing. So the next graphic I show, this is a bit of an eye chart, but the blue dash section is the current 55 mile per hour, and then the green section is the 60 mile per hour zone right now. We're proposing, if you'll see on the left-hand side of the road, extending that. It's a 3,000 foot extension, so that includes the school as well as the intersection with Lady Smith Road. So that is the update. I'm happy to take any comments. I have more after this, so not to bury the lead. There's more exciting details from VDOT, but I'm sure this will get some comments.
Yeah, Ms. Keeney, you want to go ahead and continue?
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you.
So we also pulled just a graphic response. We're trying to show each of the board members. I know sometimes these board updates are not incredibly particular to what you're doing. So this is a graphic showing the work orders that we've received in Caroline County from the beginning of the year to earlier this week. So we broke it out by our area headquarters, and then the graphic on the right is a scatter chart just showing every work order that's come in. We were trying to see, is it located in a certain area? And much the same as the other two counties that we get, it's kind of a smattering where they're getting their predominantly along our higher concentrated traffic areas. We've seen 655 work orders within the past 10 months. Most of those are pavement related. Some ditching. If you'll see on the next slide, this is the completion rate. So we've completed 423 work orders during that same time. I didn't want to show the exact percentage because some of these are carried over from the previous year. But as you can see, those pavement concerns are closing very quickly. I have a video if time permits that we can talk about a new piece of equipment that we've been using, and we've been spreading that around to try to accommodate more of these and get them done quicker. Again, ditching and pipes and culverts are more labor intensive, and as the work orders are coming in approximately 2 a day, it's more work than we can really get done at any given point, but this is just a graphic to show you we are working on it, and we are working to get that improved. All right, so that is the official conclusion. If you all have questions, I'm happy to respond.
Thank you, Ms. Keenan. Mr. Thomas?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mrs. Keenan, thank you very much for your excellent work. I promise not to build up with a lot of good stuff and then be bad at the end. But again, congratulations on your almost 1-year anniversary in Caroline. I think you've done a great job here for that time. I have several. I had 5 comments that I've written down from that. So that's the first one. The second one is thank you for reducing the speed limit around the state fair. That does mean a lot. I had to represent the board a few years ago when a trooper was killed because of speeding there, so I do appreciate that. I met this morning with several representatives of VDOT, county staff, about some issues we have in Milford with regards to water flowing across a road. So I think we have a plan to kind of address that, but I do need your help on one thing that we didn't mention there. We need to have the ditch dredged or cleaned on New Baltimore Road, because New Baltimore Road it's a higher elevation, and if that water is not routed off of there via Baltimore Road, it tends to come down into Blatt subdivision and flood quite a few places there.
Okay.
So I'd appreciate that. And in your report, it said the 207 bridge replacement is later. So I thought you were going to start that in the fall. So is that delayed? And that's not a criticism. It's just merely a point of information.
I'm not sure on that. I can get back to you on the exact dates of that award.
Okay. Now, if I could ask if you could go back to the first slide so we could see, because my note was for you to clarify Ms. Parker's email regarding the next one, I guess, with the route on. Okay. So this is 207, and the top right is where it's 55?
Correct, as well as the portion
So
in front of the high school is 55
Okay.
as well. So the dotted portion is showing it
and I'm
is
just-
55 right now.
Okay, I'm just trying to get a perspective so I can
Correct.
understand coming from my house going to the high school. So my house would be at the top right.
The
It's
top right
55.
is Bowling Green.
Yes.
Yes.
It's 55 there, and as I come over the hill past the turn to go to Milford, it becomes 60.
Correct.
So that is the entire green part, and then you're going to make it 55 at Ladysmith Road,
Correct.
before Ladysmith Road.
Correct.
Okay, how much before?
It would be at the intersection of Ladysmith Road and 207.
Okay. See, that doesn't really help. The issue is if I'm coming out of Ladysmith Road to turn onto 207, left or right, as I look east, there is a visibility issue. I can't necessarily see as far as I need to, and if people are going faster, that makes it even more critical.
So we can look at line of sight. That was reviewed as part of the traffic study, but we can go back and have our crews make sure that the line of sight is is adequate at that section. These roads are built with modern geometry in place, so there shouldn't be severe angles, but we definitely can go look at that, and we can see,
Well, I mean, I'm sure the sheriff has it, if not the sheriff, the state police. But there have been several accidents at Ladysmith Road. We even put extra signs there, and we're trying to do bumps and things like that. So that is an issue. To tell you the truth, if you made 55 all the way back to the bypass, I wouldn't bother you again at all.
and again, sir, this has been reviewed by the highest levels in VDOT as well as above VDOT by the Secretary of Transportation, and so I'm merely reporting back to you that we have taken this per your request as high as we can go.
And I told you when you were in the audience that I would not beat you up for this because I understand you can't kill the messenger. So I'm just trying to give the messenger another message that says we have an issue still at Ladysmith Road the way it is because there's a line of sight issue. And if we were going to have a perfect solution or a perfect compromise, you know the definition of a compromise is nobody's happy, right? I want it to be 55, but I'd settle for 60 from the high school to 95 or Carmel Church. That's all I can say to you, and I'm sure the sheriff and I will take it up with others. But thank you very much for what you do. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Thomas.
you,
Mr. Black?
Ms. Keenan, how are you this evening?
I'm well, thank you.
About a month ago or 2 months ago, I had called you about, or Mr. Parton email you about the side of the road. You're heading east out of Lake Landor. There was a side of the road that's kind of, I guess, was washed out, I guess the best way to put it. And you guys had put down some sort of patch. We haven't had much rain, but the rain that we did get, which was a month ago, I mean, it's already, whatever's under there, I think it's an underlying issue. The patch is already breaking up. Okay. So I don't think it's going to worsen in dry weather, but I think if we get any sort of heavy rain, I think it'll become a problem again. And then obviously with the freezing conditions of so forth, I think it'll make it even worse. So if you could take a look at that again. And you guys had, I mean, it looked great when you did it to put the patch. I had several things, but then when it rained, I mean, that was kind of an issue. Okay. The other thing, too, is when you guys, I think on Ladysmith Road, you guys had done some mowing, and just recently, I think you did it either today or the last couple of days. Is there any possibility, because we have an Adopt a Highway program, we just picked up litter on that road, I don't know, 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, and there's always constantly litter going down, so you never can keep up with it. But a lot of times when they mow, they just mow over the litter. And so what happens is one plastic bag becomes 50 plastic bags. You know what I mean? So I don't know if there's any way of, I mean, because they just mow right over the trash. And so it's actually makes it pretty unsightly. I mean, even though the grass looks great, it looks like there's a lot more litter out there. You know what I mean? It's grinding them up. I don't know if there's any way that you can, when they do the mowing, is there a way to get some trash pickup on that before there's a mow?
So they do make every effort to pick up as large of the pieces of trash as possible before they pick it up, but obviously litter is an issue. We do have a memorandum of understanding with Caroline County, and we've seen an improvement in the Adopt a Highway since that has happened. That is to say, we're doing our best with the resources we have to pick up as much of the trash before we go mow it, but there are always pieces that get missed, so they're picking up the larger if there's a tire, if there's any obstruction that could damage the equipment. But
so in other words, like if there's like a bunch of plastic bags, they're just going to mow over them?
they will make their best effort to get as much of it as they can.
So they're going to mow over them.
Don't kill the messenger.
Yeah. So that's all right. Speaking about that, getting into the Adopt a Highway, because we do have an Adopt a Highway program. Is there a way, like, so at the end of an Adopt a Highway day when we do the trash pickup, I go to your website, I type in how many volunteers we had, I type in how many hours it took, all of that on that website, and then it goes away, and there's never any like feedback as far as we do it 4 to 5 times a year. It would be nice to get feedback every once in a while, say, hey, look, just to kind of report back to us, because we've been going on strong now for probably 4 or 5 years, I would imagine, but it would be just nice to see. I mean, you must have the data there. We're sending it off, because I always get the receipt that thank you for your, thank you for your report, but it would be nice to see from you guys like what some of the different Adopt a Highway programs, because that could actually help boost some competition maybe among some of the Adopt a Highways. When we get data back from you guys, there's a lot of data up there. Maybe we can get the data from you guys as far as what has been picked up. I mean, I know Mr. Schiebel's doing it himself too, but like I don't think I'm not reporting to Mr. Schiebel what we're picking up. That goes to you guys. So you're still doing that. So it would be nice to get the reports back every once in a while,
Sure,
if that's
absolutely.
possible. And then the last thing is, the big project, the Smart Scale project that we had, the Ladysmith Road project, which is moving forward. We had Mr. Forehand, and I know he's not here tonight. We had talked about, with Mr. Nelson, we had this meeting about kind of what we can do to make it aesthetically look as pleasing as possible when people come off the interstate onto Ladysmith, to make it a welcoming kind of feel in that area. And we were supposed to have a meeting in regards to that, and that meeting has not occurred yet. And I would just like to know if there's a possibility that we can, we can sit down and see what some of the options are that are available.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
And
Thank
I
you,
believe
Ms.
we have another meeting that we're setting up.
What's that?
If we could get a copy of the current plans, I think they're like 75%. So if we could get a copy of that, that would.
Sure, absolutely. We can get you a copy of those plans as well.
Thank you, Mr. Black. Ms. Long?
Good evening. All right, we're going to start. First of all, I want to note that the 301 bridge, of course, as you said, rehabilitation has finished. And even though it was supposed to be a year, I'm so glad you all changed contractors. The second crew you got in was much easier to live with, did a much cleaner job, and they left the parking lot that the restaurant was leasing to them in very nice, clean condition. No trash, no ruts or anything. So thank you very much for that. Let's talk Caroline Village. It says you're going to continue to work on those roads through the winter. What can citizens expect to see during the winter?
So this will be doing the earthwork. They'll be preparing the ditches as well as putting in driveway pipes where needed for crossovers. So that's mostly the civil work that would be done. We're getting to the point right now where the pavement temperatures and the earth temperatures are getting a little too cool for them to put down a strong level of surface treatment. So we'd prefer to do that in the spring when we have more consistent temperatures. So we're looking to continue that earthwork. We've had our civil contractor up in North Stafford doing a very large project, and that's getting a little bit delayed, so they aren't able to get down here soon enough to get that prepped before the asphalt plants would close this winter. So we'll be having them come in the winter months. They can still prep that, cut those ditches and line them appropriately. They'll be doing things like check dams, so if you see small piles of rocks, I've heard people call it, the goal of that is if the water's coming down while those ditches are still being created, it'll catch that water rather than have it free flow. So the goal of that is just to slow down water, to build up good ditches for the future.
But if we have bad weather, that type of thing this winter, the roads are still going to be just as somewhat passable as they are now. Not that they're real passable now, but they're somewhat passable. Okay, great. And then in the spring, as soon as the temperature is consistently above what temperature?
It would really be dependent on when the asphalt plants open, because this is a liquid asphalt, so they would be coming, I would estimate, probably in the April timeframe. Okay. But that's variable dependent on the industry.
Thank you, just in case they ask me.
So I'd say early spring is our goal.
I want to, on 17, the cutters, the Boomax guys are doing a great job. I love having the brush cut back so that if the deer are standing on the bank, I know they're there. So thank you very much for that. The emerald ash borer species, any possibility you could share that information with us, simply for homeowners' awareness and everything else? First, I had heard of it, and I have a huge ash tree that sits right by my house, so I want to know what to look for. One other thing on the routine things, the spray, the growth retardant spray. How often do you have to put that on? And I'm sure that's really test it for water runoff and everything,
Absolutely.
correct?
We would only be spraying that once a year. It'd be in the early spring. So we're looking to do that in the April timeframe. Basically prevents the grass from having the seed head form as early. And so it helps buy us a little extra time that we don't have to mow quite so early in the year. And so it'll keep that grass slightly lower so it wouldn't germinate quite so early.
Does it work on Johnson grass? 'Cause
It does. There is a separate application for Johnson
Okay.
grass.
I had a constituent meeting in Upper Caroline. The biggest complaint was speed on Stonewall Jackson Drive. Sheriff Lipper, if you're listening, Stonewall Jackson Drive, lots of complaints on speed there. If your little speed sign's ever available, that would be great. But can we get a speed study done on that road? Can we get in line for that?
I can send you copies of the requirements for speed studies. There's a
Okay.
number of things that are required by the constituents prior
And
to.
can I get, is it okay to share a list of what kind of accidents have been there? I know we lost a couple of horses, but if there have been any other accidents, that sort of gives us an idea as to the safety also. One request that was also done, and I didn't know if it was possible, there is a fire station ahead sign that sits right on the curve as you're going down, and the fire station's on the right. There was some talk as to when they're pulling out, if cars are coming down, they can't see the trucks are pulling out or the squads are pulling out. Any possibility of a signal light on that they could activate from the station when they're pulling out so people would know the fire trucks are pulling across?
Is this also on Stonewall
Yes.
Jackson? Okay. We can look into that. I can have traffic engineering.
Okay, great.
Do you know the station number by chance? I can pull it from. Thank you.
And then I also want to thank you for acting so quickly to trim those trees back on Stonewall where I ran through a stop sign because I couldn't see it. So thank you very much. That is all I have, and appreciate seeing you here tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Long. How are you?
All right.
Again, thank you for taking care of Route 30. I think that really helpful. I think, certainly the citizens, and I know the people coming to the State Fair appreciated that. In your presentation, I noticed that one of your major efforts in the county was the paving. I'm a little displeased. It appears that whatever they're doing and when they're repaving, in a couple of days it's the same issue. The asphalt, either the cold patch or whatever they're putting, doesn't last very long. I was riding down Ruther Glen Road and Signboard Road and Concord today, and you have the same holes reappearing over and over and over again. So I'm not sure whether it's the workmanship or the material, but it really appears that they're the same issues. If I called you today, there would be the same issues that we've called several times about on Ruther Glen and Signboard and Concord Road. So could you look into that for me, please? And my last comment is, when we changed, when the change was made not to pave Oxford Road, we talked about, that was supposed to have been completed in 2017. And I had Mr. Whiteman go out and take a look at it. The road is in pretty poor shape. It's been patched a few times. But it really needs to be repaved. And I think you and I talked about it not being on the list. I'm just curious now how it was moved off the list to be taken care of far back as 2017.
So I'll have to go back and pull more data on that. We are going through the analysis for the fiscal year 21 repaving cycle this November. We will be noticing a change in the time cycle as far as when those are. VDOT as a whole has changed the way that they're going to be awarding those contracts, so they'll be seasonal as early as fiscal year 21. So we won't be able to firmly tell you this will be done in
Right.
this month. It'll be in a seasonal contract. We're still trying to come to terms with what that means for our paving schedule. And another time, I'm sure, I've been droning on quite a bit, but I have another presentation that I'm happy to show you as far as some of the other alternatives that we can use to try to stretch our dollars a little bit further. We get $3.3 million a year for repaving across the residency, and our average cost is $400,000 per lane mile for hot mix asphalt. So that's the 2-inch mill and fill that you're seeing. So when you take that, extrapolate it out by 4,700 miles that we have in the residency, it doesn't go very far. So we just want to be very apparent that there are a lot of needs. We're very aware there are a lot of needs. We're trying to do alternate paving options. So we're using surface treatment where we can. We're using a cape seal where we can. We're trying to stretch our budgets a little further and get you more improvements to the pavement if it's not the same 2-inch mill and overlay that you're used to getting on some of your higher volume primaries. So we're trying to do some of these on more rural roads or roads that have lower traffic volumes to try to extend that pavement budget as far as we can. But I'd be happy in the December or January timeframe to present you all with what we're proposing for the list. That's going to be based on condition. So it may not just be this road hasn't been repaved in 20 years. Sometimes they're wearing differently based on the amount of traffic that they're seeing or the amount of drainage that's coming or holding on the water will have more urgent matters. So it's not entirely based on the age of the road or the time that it's been since it was paved last.
Could I add in with that one? Because we were told, and I specifically asked Mr. Nelson when he was here before you, so it's probably before your time, but we were specifically promised that Oxford Road would be on next year's schedule. So I'm not sure what happened. And, you know, there are things that happen. I can tell you personally, last year, and I told your folks this morning, last year the road that I lived on was restriped. This year you repaved it. That really doesn't sound like an efficient use. Not that you made those decisions at all, but if you restripe a road, why you repave it the next year? Because you're paving over the stripes you put there last year. So
Some of that may be because the contract had always been that it would be repaved in this fiscal year, but the stripes were unsafe. And so for a safety, even if it is seemingly only 9 months, it is safer to have those stripes down and make sure that they're up to date. So.
that's why I think you do such a good job.
Thank you.
Ms. Keenan, certainly we thank you and the VDOT staff for all they do for Caroline County, and we look forward to continue working with you. So,
All right.
thank you.
Thank you. As a proposal for moving forward, VDOT apparently used to present you all with a list or a questionnaire that you could fill out before we come, so that way we have I might actually have answers for you if you have anything. So we're proposing doing that with each of our counties. So I'm wondering if that's something you all would like to get, just what do you have for us, and that way we can come and have answers, and I don't just say, let me get back to you. So that's up to you all if that's something you'd like to do. That way we can tailor this more to the questions that you all have.
So we can agree to board members, Rick? Yes.
As long
All
as
right.
it doesn't take away from us chatting with you. We like to talk.
All right, thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Ms. Keenan. Now we'll move to the appointment section of our agenda. The Economic Development Authority at large. Mr. Long, I believe you have
Yes,
appointment.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to nominate for the Economic Development Authority, Mr. Aikens. He is already the at-large representative. He is still interested in serving, and by all reports, has done a good job in that position.
Okay, Ms. Aikens has nominated Mr. Aikens to be on the Economic Development Authority. Is there a second?
Second.
Wait, you talking Atkins?
Atkins.
Atkins, okay. Philip Atkins, yeah, okay.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Also, there is a Planning Commission for Port Royal. Mr. Forehand's not here tonight, so we'll take the Port Royal District Planning Commission nomination.
Yes, sir. I'd like to nominate Carol Horton.
Second.
Ms. Carol Horton has been nominated for the Planning Commission for Port Royal and properly second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Yeah, we vote on both. consent agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda that anyone would like to have further discussion?
I would like to pull G, Mr. Chairman, just for discussion.
Okay, Mr. Thomas requests item G to be pulled from the consent agenda. Any other items from the consent agenda you want to get further discussion? Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of item G?
So moved.
Second.
Properly moved and second that we adopt the consent agenda with the exception of item G. Mr. Thomas, you have the floor.
For agenda item G, I have no problem with the
I'm sorry, Mr. I didn't vote on the agenda because I was moving too fast.
I'll vote aye.
Say aye.
Aye. I need a vote on the consent agenda with the exception of item G. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Mr. Thomas, item G.
I have no problem with the county adhering to the governor's schedule with regards to holidays for Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's. I have had several constituents ask me about a January holiday, and that's the holiday that's January 18th. And I know some other counties have removed Lee Jackson Day and had different holidays. I think Dumfries and Prince William may have been one of those recently. So is it possible we can look at that in the next couple of months?
Remove it from the holiday calendar.
And
Have
replace
discussion
it
about
and
it.
have discussion
Replace.
and replace it with a different holiday.
The only thing I would add to that would be courts and all the folks at work that don't follow the county schedule, would that get that as a state holiday, would be closed. So we would have part of the government open, part of it closed. So we'd have to think that all the way through.
And that I understand, and I guess that's the same thing for other counties that have done it. So I
Can we
imagine they work
research?
for it.
Can we research how many have done it? I hadn't really heard that any had done it, but I don't keep up. But
I
we
know
can find
some.
that out.
Yeah, I know there are at least a couple, and I'll make sure I get you that. But
The town doing it versus a county doing it are two different things
Okay.
because of the other courts and things that'll just all close and we'll get
Well,
all the phone calls.
in particular, the gentleman that asked me about this at first was trying to do county business on that holiday, and he had a long discussion with me about why was the county office closed, and I explained it was a state holiday, and there was a long discussion about why it was a state holiday, and that's a whole nother story. So if we could just put that on our agenda to discuss, I would appreciate it, and I would move that we approve G with the exception of the discussion we're going to have later.
There's been a motion to approve item G. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're now at the public comment section. No. So I'm going to take a break. What I'd like to do at 7:24, we'll take a 6-minute break and come back at 7:30 and do public comment. We're now in recess. Call the Caroline County Board of Supervisors meeting back to order from recess. We're now at public comment. It's time for our citizens to give us comments. You can comment on any issue that you have to discuss that's not on part of our agenda item. We ask that you adhere to the 3-minute time limit. Give us your name and voting magisterial district. So public comment section of our agenda is now open.
Good evening. My name is George Spinner, and I live in the Mattapanai district. I was interested in what Ms. Keenan was saying about the road work and everything in the county. And I've noticed, and it was not good that she was here, I just spoke to her outside about an issue that I see getting a little worse, and I wanted to see about addressing it. Oh, neat idea, clock. I've noticed that 301 from about 30 down to the Hanover County line has gotten considerably worse, the traffic has, over the last couple of years, not including the traffic from the fair. And I was just wondering if maybe, while it's not terrible yet, I could see the possibility that it could be. I see more and more people, more and more times during the year that there's a lot of traffic on 301 because people are using it rather than using Interstate 95. And I was just wondering if maybe it might not be a good time to start looking into the possibility of widening 301 from 30 maybe down to either the Caroline County line or to 54 in Hanover County for future traffic issues that might be coming up down the road. So I was planning on bringing this up at the next constituents meeting for Mr. Underwood and for Mr. Thomas. And like I said, it's just something I would, while it's not bad now, I just thought maybe now would be a good time to start looking into it for, in case down the road traffic does start getting worse. I know that the land has already been allocated for it to be widened to 4 lanes at some time in the future, so apparently at some point in time somebody thought about this. So I just wanted to put that out there, and I hope you all will give it some consideration, because Ms. Keenan says that it's up to the board to first approach this issue. So I'm asking you to approach it. Okay, thank you.
Public comment.
Good evening, Board. I can comment on what Ms. Keenan had to say, because I'd like to talk about the speed study and the problems that we have on 207. And Ms. Long, it was very similar to what we had up in Port Royal when we go from 55 to 45 to 35. And when we're doing this 60 down to 55 with no warning in between, then we're back at 60 from Mr. Ames's property out. I thought they told us they had to have at least 3 miles. That's why they were past the Ladysmith interchange. But we'll check on that again. And her study, or the study by VDOT, was back in 2018 at a 55-mile speed limit. And that's why they felt like they could go to 60. I don't think it's been 60 long enough to get any real numbers. So what I like to do is I'm going to find out from our dispatch center, because I think we can break it down in that 60 zone, because we have been enforcing the 60. And let's see how fast some of those vehicles are going through there. The last but not least, Nelson Hill Road is the other part of 722. You have Colonial up front. And if you remember when they repaved all that and the speed limit was where it is, they did away with that acceleration ramp. Remember, we used to have an acceleration ramp if you were going westbound on 207. Well, that's done away with because they cut some of the mound down and they said the 55 zone they could handle it. So we're right there again at a place that, when Mr. Thomas compromises and talks with her, I'm looking at the public. I don't want the public to get up there and say, we're setting a speed trap. We're at 60, then we're at 55. We're at 60, then we're at 55. We're at 60, and then we're at 45. 55, I think it goes 60 to 45. There is nothing in between. In the part that it's 55 in between through Mr. Thomas's district, it's only 0.7 of a mile. And that's my part of saying, very similar to Port Royal, it creates, in the minds of the general public, a speed trap. Now, I know they want to accommodate us by putting up the reduced speed zone signs ahead that they said they weren't going to do, but that would help us from an enforcement standpoint. Last but not least, when George was talking about the state fair, in talking with the first sergeant, yes, we put up our speed trail. We'll find out exactly how many vehicles went through there. That's something we've been doing. I was hoping she was going to address one of the things, Mr. Underwood, that you had at a constituents meeting, that we said if you're going eastbound on 30, if the left lane would go to 652 or Ruther Glen Road, Signboard Road, then that would allow through traffic to go straight so we wouldn't have a problem there. Good. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Sheriff Flipper. Any other comments during public comment? any other comments during our public comment? Seeing no one, public comments are now closed.
Mr. Chairman, before we go to the next order of
Yes,
business, I want to address something Mr. Spinner said. The county has been trying to get VDOT to look at 301 being 4 lanes since before I was on the board. I know Mr. Bob Farmer, who was the supervisor in the 80s, was trying to get it done. So we have been addressing that with VDOT, and I guess they're on their 3rd or 4th new resident, but we'll address it with her again, but it's never gotten out of the addressing stage.
Yeah, because most of that's right down in my district from Hanover line to your district.
Correct.
So
Correct.
I think we both have a big role to play in that.
I would love to see that. We tried to tell VDOT that when they started talking about how to reduce traffic on 95, is 301 was better than 207, but that's another story. So.
And they are still aware that we're interested in that. Both Sheriff Lippa and I have spoken to them about that. I've spoken to them at BAMPO about it. So they know.
Sheriff Lippa.
I was just going to say, too, that I do have a letter or the email and email chain from everyone, especially what Mr. Thomas wrote in, to Secretary Moran, who is that of Public Safety. And if we need to go further, then we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. Agenda item number 4 for unfinished business, review of conditions for special exception 02-2018 Moss Neck Private Campground. Benjamin.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, this is a one-year review for the private campground for the owners of Moss Neck Manor. As you remember, previously there were a number of renewals by the Board of Supervisors. Every year this application came to the board for renewal. Last year the board amended that process and replaced that with a one-year review based upon the fact that we had not had any outstanding violations related to that campground for a period of time. And tonight is a one-year review. We've had no issues that we've noted with the campground use, and it's here for your discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Fincham. Any board members have comments regarding the review of conditions, special exception 02-2018?
No action is required by the board for this review, unless you want to take some action.
I don't think we need to. I think we're fine. You're the professional. Thank you, Mr. Fincham. Item number 5, new business. Creation of a flyer informing citizens of opportunities for local tax relief. This is a comment from our citizens at one of my constituent meetings. Since we don't have a newspaper, a lot of them, we don't have internet access in some of our rural areas. They were concerned about how do the citizens get the information regarding tax relief and the other issues that are pertinent to the county. And we thought about maybe sending a flyer out every now and then. Just want to get the board's opinion and board comments as well as citizens. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on item number 5. Ms. Long?
Yes, Mr. Underwood, I would have no problem. Information is always good. We've got those programs there. But we might want to consider, since programs may need to be updated, if, depending on how many programs there are and maybe contact numbers, or although not everyone has internet, most people get there at some time or another, fixing something that could go in with a twice-a-year tax bill and just mail out right with them, and saves labor and postage and supplies, and we know it's going to get into citizens' hands. So I would think we would try to do that, would be my recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Long. Mr. Black?
Yeah, I would concur with that. In addition, if there's like a change, I don't know if there's like a change between the time frames where we have something that's pertinent to the next. We could post it in public places, maybe get them in flyers in the churches or something like that, on public places, put a flyer out there, and obviously put it out on our websites for the people that have internet. But I think that would be the way to go to start with.
Thank you, Mr. Black.
That's exactly what I was going to say, is we send out tax bills, so we can have extra things printed on the tax bill and say this is a program. I know we have a senior citizens one that a lot of people say, oh, I didn't even know about. So we get the high mileage one, maybe just something that says these are the programs available, or if we need to, there's not a lot of room on the bill, but maybe a separate piece of paper that goes in wouldn't cost more for mailing. I think the bills are like checks. They're created. It's like a threefold thing.
We can print some things on it. I'll work with the treasurers what we could put in it. Otherwise, if you add in things, I think then it's got to goes in an envelope.
Yeah.
So then they put the pre-printed thing and whatever we're putting in an envelope, and then the postage goes up and all the other costs associated. But we can certainly come up with something that maybe, you need to check with, here are these programs at the commissioner's office, and here's the phone number, so anybody that doesn't have internet or whatever could at least call.
Because we got senior citizens, the high mileage, we've got the disabled veterans ones. Those are really the big three.
Yeah, they were working on it for us. The commissioner was working on trying to come up with all the things that they
I think that's good, Put it on the bill from the treasurer, because they're coming out in December. Or
also
they'll be here in November, right? They'll be here, right?
Maybe a flyer to take to our constituent meetings.
Right.
Have those available. Okay.
No.
All right, thank you, board members. Agenda item number 6, discussion of possible changes in the General Assembly legislation liaison services through the Georgia Washington Regional Commission. Mr. Coley.
It's come to our attention from the executive director of the GWRC that there's an action that's pending before their committee this month. I think you'll meet in 2 weeks to determine whether they're going to go out for an RFP to continue their legislative services, which are provided by Eldon James and Associates, or whether they may just do away with that. And what it is right now, each member of GWRC contributes $5,000. We have for a number of years through our budget contributed $5,000. And that's one of those things. It's not a per capita. It's an equal split among each county, $5,000. And so we talked with Mrs. Long, who's also on there, and Mr. Black, and Ms. Long would like for the board to give her some guidance, I think, on how she should, handle that vote at GWRC. But I will add that we do, from a staff perspective, find that service is beneficial to us here because we're not in Richmond every day, nor have time during budget season and all that we've got going on in January and February when they're in session to be there. But that there's also a lot of things that happen prior to session that we get information from Eldon at the CAO meetings monthly. So we find it beneficial. If you don't want to use that particular firm, that's fine, but we would like for you to at least try to find another firm to provide that service. That we find it very beneficial for the $5,000.
Mr. Thomas, or Mr. Long? Mr. Thomas? Mr. Black?
Yeah, I also serve on that committee. And we have, one of the things that we had discussed last time was the fact that at GWRC, they can't even remember the last time an RFP was put up. We've always been Mr. James and Associates, Mr. James and Associates, and Mr. James and Associates. And I have concerns, and I wasn't the only one in the room that had concerns. There were other localities that had concerns of just going with the attitude, well, it's always been that way, we're going to continue to use it. I do think there's a competitive process out there, and I personally believe I think a lot of other localities are in the same mindset. I don't mind having a legislative liaison, but I think that we do need to put out competitive bids out there for it, rather than just going to the same person over and over again to see what's out there. That's my statement. Thank you.
Is that what you think, Nancy?
Well, we did not take any votes at the meeting. There were definitely, everybody was in agreement that not just on this consultant, but on other consultants that GWRC and MEPA have used over the past years, they have not bid it out. We have a new director now that wants to become part of the regular protocol, as it should be. Our concern with the legislative position is that it's too late really to bid it out. The only people that are going to bid back are people who are just starting out, don't have any know anybody down there. So you want to put it out, you want to do it right, and be able to interview people. And some of the counties have people that are on their staff full-time that do this. We do not. King George uses their lawyer. I don't know. I know Stafford has their own employee, and I think Spotsylvania does also. So I don't know where it's going to go when we come to vote. But obviously, everybody does want to put out a bid. But if it's going to be for this year or next year, we do not know. And secondly, I do think we need somebody up there, and we need to take our time getting the right person. Eldon's done fine for us in the past. There is a possibility, and I put 2 calls into Dr. Millsap, but I believe she's on vacation, that there's a possibility of maybe hooking on to another contract for so much. Were you able to find out anything on that?
I think it's Fauquier County that actually James and Associates has a contract with the provision that you can do a ride-on on that contract. So there are provisions to continue to use his service with that contract. Now, we'd have to negotiate the rate. I can't guarantee you a $5,000 rate yet, but we didn't want to do that until we knew how GWRC was going to approach it at your meeting.
And it should be on the agenda for the 21st. But how it will go, I do not know.
And he does pretty much, what the county directs him to do.
Mm-hmm.
So if he's not doing enough, it's probably because the county didn't direct him to do enough or specific things. He used to be the county administrator at King George, so he knew Caroline, King George, Spotsylvania fairly well.
Exactly.
He used to do a great job with all of the legislation we had. We used to get, weekly or updates of what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think we had any last year except the one parking thing we tried to get on late, and he did a good job of getting it on late. So
Yeah. And he goes to the administrators meeting every month, but we don't get to see him very often. I think twice a year at GWRC, but he's there for the administrators, so that's good. So we'll let you know how it goes, and I think we'll have time to work on it at the next meeting.
So I'm hearing that the board wants to continue to support.
I think we
No, I am okay with, if it's too late in this process, I'm okay with continuing with him for this year, but I do think that there needs to be some competitive bids put out next year for the process, because I don't think it's fair we put out bids for everything else. Why wouldn't we put out a bid for the service just because we've been using them? Because we've used them. I mean, if there's something out there, yeah, okay.
We don't argue. I don't argue with that.
We just wanted to know, Mr. Black, since it's so late in the General Assembly, to go through this year, but then you're saying that we should be looking and have a discussion for next year.
Right. That's fine.
And get the bids out early enough.
Yeah.
I thank you, gentlemen, because we just need to know what to do when we go next month, or in 2 weeks. Thank you,
gentlemen. Item number 7 is the creation of a committee to work with the Meadow Event Park on the possible creation of admissions tax. This is an issue that came up again at my constituent meeting, and that I talked to Ms. Joliffe, the CEO for the fair. She was not in any way negative about it at all. She just thought and was hoping that we could put a committee together to talk about if we have an admissions tax, that some of the funds from the admissions tax would also help the park continue to expand. That was one of her kind of conditions, that she said that would be fair, to where we could do a rev share to help the county and to help them continue to expand. So that was something that she and I talked about after, I think Tony was at my meeting. He went over and discussed it with her. She called me, and so I wanted to bring it before the board to say that We have had a preliminary discussion. Just want to get your ideas on, do you think it's a good idea? And can we form a committee to have this discussion with the Metal Event Park? And how would you like to proceed? Mr. Thomas?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I can tell you, like the other one, this is not a new idea.
Right.
This is an idea that comes from when the park was actually brought to the county. The county had to get permission from the General Assembly to do an admissions tax. But we did say we would look at it after the state fair got up to a certain point. So it may be totally new to the people at the fair now, but not to the fair itself and the county. So I think it's time we start looking at it to give a direct benefit to the county.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Mr. Black?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'll be honest with you, I have some concerns. As we know, 8 years ago, 10 years ago, the state fair went out of business. They're now just reestablished themselves. We got very fortunate that the state fair came back to us after its bankruptcy. That was definitely in question for a long time. And my concern is, yes, I think they probably had a banner year this year. But my concern is the precedent it sets for any sort of venue down the road. My concern is welcome to Caroline County. We're welcome to tax you. I mean, we want to welcome businesses, and I want them to maximize their profits, and I think we make a lot of money off the fair as it is. We would not want to lose them. We would not want them to move in any way. So I just don't want to, right now, put any sort of burden on them. They're doing well, and I think they're doing well for us. I just don't think we need to put an additional burden onto them. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Black. Ms. Long?
I don't think I have enough information to say how I feel about an admissions tax now. However, forming a committee to get some information and to do some research on the stability of the income and the future and how it looks, and if it would be a burden or if it would be an asset to the county and not a burden to them, I think we need to find out before we can even talk about an admission test.
Thank you, Ms. Long. And I agree that I think we should have a committee. Everything that I've read regarding taxation says that if you have a use tax, so we wouldn't be taxing our elderly or other folks, but people who are just using the state fair, which would make it fair, and it would be a use tax rather than taxing all citizens, which would just make sense. But I think I would like to see a committee, so do we need can I get a motion? Can I get a motion to say we form a committee to meet with Metal Event and just get this ball rolling?
So moved.
Okay, I'll second.
The discussion is who would serve on the committee, and I would like to see a couple board members or a board member and maybe a citizen who's interested in what we're doing with the state fair and understands taxation. So the question is, who would be willing to serve?
Well, of course,
Certainly I would serve.
I would imagine you and maybe another board member, staff person, someone from the Commissioner of Revenue's office.
I think you need somebody financially savvy, which and tech
And maybe
savvy,
somebody
which
from
I
the
am
chamber.
not.
They're in the election.
Maybe Mr. Wilson.
No.
Maybe Mr. Wilson.
Yeah, Mr. Wilson, somebody from the chamber, or a couple of people from the chamber.
Keep it small. Keep it
Yeah,
small.
I just thought maybe three people. Yeah, I just think maybe
5?
3 people. I'd like to see 3. My idea was really to have 3 people meet with maybe 3 of their folks, start brainstorming ideas, bring it back to the board to talk about what are the discussion points, what are some of the pros, the cons, as we see it, and then talk about how our board wants us to move forward. But it would be a board decision rather than just us committee members. I would want input from the board to say, this is what we think is the best way to move forward.
Ms. Long made the motion, but if I could add to her motion, I would recommend you an appointee from the Commissioner of Revenue's office, whoever they decide, Mr. Wilson, and one person from the chamber, and that would be 4. You're just kind of gathering ideas, but the chamber could help with how it affects business, how they see Mr. Wilson's tourism. The Commissioner of Revenue is how it actually works, what kind of money they're getting in. And the reality is, we have to get permission from the General Assembly before we can even implement the tax. So we're not even talking about implementing this tax until 2022 or 2021. Yeah, 21 at the earliest, because you're not going to get it on the General Assembly now without a lot of work.
So we need how to do that also.
And just to be clear, the motion was to forward committee to study the possibility. We're still going to have to bring all this information back for the board to decide. Just being clear on that. But I think you're right. Smaller is better, and people who know what they're doing.
That was my second to what you said, and if you'll accept my friendly amendment of those 4 people, I think we can move ahead. Mr. Chairman?
So the motion is that we create a committee to work with the Meadow Event on the possibility of and discussion around admissions tax that would consist of myself, Mr. Wilson, a appointee from the Commissioner of Revenue's office, and
someone from the Chamber of Commerce.
And someone from the Chamber of Commerce.
And of course, you got somebody from the park.
Right.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, well, they're going to pull the committee together. Right.
That's it.
That's the motion. Can I get a second?
Already
A second. Oh, there's a motion, proper second, on the creation of a committee to work with Meadow Event Park. All those in favor say aye.
Second, Mr. Chairman, can we have some discussion?
Oh, yes. Absolutely. Just any discussion?
Yeah, I'm going to vote no on this, and I'm going to vote no on this because of the fact that, I mean, we get this in our board packet, and there was like no structure. We're putting together a structure of this committee on the fly, and I'll be honest with you, I think this should have been, the structure of the committee should have been in the packet first about how we saw this, or input from staff before we, on the fly at a meeting, put together a committee. So that's my reason I'm going to vote nay.
And the reason, Mr. Black, and I agree with you, it was just brought up in my constituent meeting, and then I discussed it with Ms. Jolliffe, and she was in agreement that there should be further discussion, not that we would be able to form a committee, just to have some discussion, even if it's even possible. So I thought, since it was at my constituent meeting, I wanted to bring it before the board so you would know what the discussion was and what discussion that she and I had. So that was my reason for bringing it to the board. So I need to roll call. Right. He said, folks, no. There's a dissension, so how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Nay.
Long?
Aye.
And I also vote aye. Mr. Cully?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Saturday we had a busy day. Sparta Day at 9 a.m. County's employee picnic at the rec park at 12. I think eating at 1, if I'm correct. Columbus Day holiday on the 14th. Office will be closed. The 17th, it was already mentioned at 7 o'clock, the Rappahannock River Intake public meeting in this building, in this room to start with. Harvest Festival was already mentioned as well on the 19th. That's all day long. Mr. Seeley's not here, but he does have a constituent meeting on the 24th. And then the Frog Level Festival, their 50-year celebration of Frog Level Fire, is on the 26th. Gets us into November, the VACO annual conference on the 9th. Okay, what time is that? And then our note, please take note, the next regular board meeting is the 14th, which is a Thursday night, following the VACO conference, because we will be traveling on Tuesday.
We do have a candidates forum, and that's at Bowling Green Town Hall, and that's tomorrow night at 6:30. So that's the 9th at 6:30. And that's pretty much all the way up till the Wednesday half-day holiday and Thanksgiving on the 20th and 29th. So that gets us through. We did not agree we removed the second meeting in November, so it would be just that one meeting in November.
Thank you, Mr. Cully.
I just have a question from Mr. Cully on capital projects. We have listed in there Bowling Green Fire renovations and Ladysmith Fire renovations, but we don't have anything for Sparta or Carmel Church Fire Station improvements. Is that just because they're not supposed to be there yet, or?
That's more, we haven't spent any money yet. We'll just add those lines down when we actually do something. I'll get Curtis to stick those in there, because we do have $200,000 set aside for both projects.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I wanted to kind of keep track, but I also wanted to interject and see if it was possible we could start looking at financing both of those projects now, because we got great rates from the last thing we did. So
We plan to bring that to you once we kind of have an idea of cost, and so we're working through on the Carmel Church site acquisition, and we kind of can get that laid out.
Okay.
The board's already authorized a task contract for the engineers to go to work, and then we'll get a hard number. We have some rough numbers. The chief's been around. He's actually had a 2-day training, and then we know some cost variances for buildings about the size of what we want to do, and they're sort of all over the map. But so I hate to go borrow way more than I need, and I don't want to.
Making progress.
But yeah, we are working on it, and that's the goal. Hopefully, the rates will stay down long enough that we can go in. But that's our ultimate plan, is to finance.
Okay. Soon. Okay. Thank you.
Does anyone know the hours for Frog Level? Chief, do you know, for their celebration? Thank you.
Closing board comments, Mr. Thomas?
I do have one, and Mr. Cully, I think we discussed this privately before. I thought we discussed it as a board. But since the county has taken over the libraries, I've had a constituent ask specifically if we could reduce the fee for copies made by citizens, since they're all paying taxes. And I think the fee right now is 20 cents a copy. And I was hoping Mr. Cully could, via executive action, make a policy that says the first 5 copies are free.
Can we speak to that? Because I think Mr. Parton has worked with the library director on that and has some information on what we're already providing for free, I think.
We are actually going to bring forth a whole set of library policies expected to be at the next meeting, and we could address it at that point if that's all right with you.
Well, are copies free? Can I get the first 5 copies? Can I get the first 5 copies free?
You want to address it, Megan?
I don't really want to, abuse the system. That's why I'm saying just 5 copies, because we don't want War and Peace to be copied, but somebody's in there for a couple of little short things. Let them make a couple of copies.
Currently, right now, what we're doing is K through 12. Any homework copies they make for a school project, that kind of thing, those are free. Resumes, job applications, those are all free right now, but we don't have a certain set number that are free, so.
Okay. Yeah. So there are some things you're doing.
Yeah, and like when you print out your tax forms, we do that half price, so we're trying to make accommodations for our patrons, so.
Let's simply recover our costs like anything else.
That's kind of what I like to do. I mean, 20 cents a copy is kind of steep for, a lot of folks. That's all I'm trying to do. And plus, I don't want to give away the farm, but we need to give something back to people, since everybody's saying I pay taxes and I got to pay 20 cents for a copy. Just trying to be a little fair. Okay. Thank you. We'll look forward to those coming later. That was all, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Mr. Black?
I have none, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Black? Ms. Long?
I have none.
And I have no comments as well.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn. Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. We are adjourned.